Welcome back to the NIO Summit live stream. We have a few more sessions for you before we close up shop here. And before we throw back to the stage, we do have a little Q&A session here with Chris Mercer. Chris, thank you so much for your talk. You have so much insight about data and Google Analytics and how to get started, and I'm super grateful. I know it's super helpful for a nonprofit audience.
No, happy to be here. Glad for having me.
How has the conference been for you so far?
It's been amazing. I love the, you guys set it apart at a level that I have not experienced.
Well, thank you.
You see other conferences that say, oh, we got a theme going on. But you guys are like, we're going to go for this theme and we're going to dig into this theme. Like when you went circus, you meant circus, right? Like certainly before our talk, we had the chandelier come down and the acrobats. It was absolutely amazing.
Well,
so
cool.
Love it.
I'm glad it's been fun. Yeah, I kind of said this from the stage the other day, but like, just random lunchtime conversations. Like, what if we did this insane thing? And then Paul Clough, who's our event manager, COO, has made it all happen.
There have been more things that I cannot unsee from this conference, right? Which is great. It's entirely memorable. Love it. Love it.
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. So I wrote down a bunch of things as you were talking, and then you kept answering all my questions, which is probably the point of your presentation.
Excellent.
To prompt those and then answer them. But one thing I think might be helpful to talk about again a little bit is just goals and how to use them. You give kind of a framework for how to set those up. I believe you talked about awareness goals, completion goals, engagement goals, but specifically thinking about, someone's going through this donor funnel. So they come to your website, they land on your donation page, maybe there's a confirmation process afterwards. What kind of key things would you suggest that, a fundraiser start tracking as goals in that process?
Yeah, I think that the tendency with analytics is to overcomplicate. With anything measurement, it's to overcomplicate because it's so easy to do that. There's so many things back there, right? I would keep it simple, and I would keep it with that ACE model where you're like, okay, how in the donor journey, how would I know when they are aware of the thing I want them to do, whatever that is?
Yeah.
So if this is, okay, I'm going to sell a table at my gala or something, whatever the offer is, when are they aware of that? So when they come to the page, it says, hey, why don't you consider doing this? That would be an awareness goal, right? Then that final step, right, when do they complete? And that would be the thank you page or whatever the thing is when they've changed and become a lead or whatever the thing is for you.
Yeah.
Then the engagement of how do they get through that process.
Right.
Because when you measure those three things, you're going to figure how many people started. You're going to know that, which most people don't, right?
Right.
They and it really comes down to numbers. I think there's only two types. It's results numbers and it's the how I got there.
Sure.
Right? So it's results and how you achieve those results.
Okay.
So when you use this ACE goals model and you set a goal for when somebody's aware, you'll know how many people started. When you set a goal for how many finished, the completion goal, you're going to know how many actually finished, right? And then you know along the way, so you know sort of where the breakdown was if there was one.
Right.
And that's why in my talk you saw some of the traffic sources, there's a big breakdown. Some didn't send any traffic at all to the cart.
Sure.
Some did, and it closed just fine. Right. Others sent a ton of information to the cart. None of them closed. And that helps me understand sort of the personality of that traffic source and what I could better do to improve the results from that traffic source.
So you can start to drill down into where they came from, what maybe even the content is that's driving them there, and then start to optimize
and how they made it
process.
through the funnel, right? How they made it through that, in this case, the donor journey.
Sure.
Right? So you know what to fix. Because I think that's the hard part. People think there's just this great mystery that's out there in terms of like, I don't know what to do next. It just didn't work. What are the results? I don't know, not great. What do you want to do? I don't know. My cousin's uncle, brother was at a conference and he heard this thing. Let's try that. And that's like one of the worst things you could do.
Sure.
Right? So, but if you measure these things, very simply, you'll say, well, actually, there's a ton of people being aware. This traffic source works really good at that.
Yeah.
It just didn't engage them. They didn't go to that next stage. So maybe we retarget that audience, or maybe we figure out what is it about that where the expectation, like let's say we're doing Facebook as ads, what was the expectation that we sent them to the page for? Because they didn't engage, right? They didn't do what we thought they were going to do. So maybe we change the messaging of the ad a little bit. Maybe that's what went wrong. But you'll know to look there based upon the numbers, that story.
Sure.
Right? We think about story in terms of the numbers is like, that's your market speaking back to you.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to get that in mass, but numbers, that's what it is. It's your market's language saying, we love this, we didn't like that.
Yeah.
And then you can fix it or scale it.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So I didn't have this written down, but it just kind of prompted. So I've heard different people have varying opinions on, so if you have a goal that's maybe an awareness goal, is there value in assigning a value to that goal rather than just zero? Because it gives you access to some additional reporting,
you'll see
various opinions. So
I mean, you'll see it in our, and I think you're right. There, it's kind of like pick what side you're on, and then you fight for your side, right? And in ours, we currently are not.
Okay.
But that said, we probably should. Right, it's a little like cobbler's kids have no shoes. Because there's really, I don't think there's harm in doing it. We just get most of our answers already in other ways. We're using Data Studio and other reporting. So it isn't something we're in GA to look at that particular metric.
Yeah.
So we're not using it. But page value can be useful when you set up goal values like that, because then you can see like which pages are going to be the most important for you. So it is definitely useful to think about moving forward in that if you're not.
Okay.
But for us, we have e-commerce. Like I said, we're answering the questions a different way. So we haven't asked that question where that was something we needed necessarily. Right?
That makes sense. So it's a tool to use if it's going to help you answer.
It's exactly right. So we talked about this in the talk too, about this KIA concept of question and information and action.
Yes.
So when you're in analytics, the goal is not to go in there and poke around and see what you can see and try to play with all the bells and whistles, because you probably don't need them. Right. The one report we talked about, which is that source medium report, that's the one report that will answer 80% of your questions if you do that one right. And you don't need to do everything else. You don't need to set up custom dimensions until you need to set up custom dimensions, right? Like until you need, when you're just like, well, I want to be able to classify it by maybe donor type or lead type.
Right.
Well, that's going to be a custom dimension. Now you can set that up, and then you go back and you up level, right, your measurement. And don't try to be perfect, just get good enough to get going. Then you're going to come back and answer it later on, or improve it later on. Because every set of questions, every set of questions leads to the next level of questions, right?
That makes sense. Well, you mentioned Data Studio. I know we have some more, nonprofits who have been deep in Google Analytics. They've got it set up. They've been tracking things. They got goals set up, and they want to dive deeper. What can something like Data Studio, help someone to draw, more insights out of their donors, their donor funnel optimization? What's possible?
Here's what so there's a ton possible data. I love Data Studio.
Okay.
I mean, they've done, that team has done more from, if you look back at the change log of all the different features and things they've done from the start, every month there's like 15 things back. It's crazy how much effort that team puts into improving this product. And they've been just month after month after month kicking it, just rolling it out. And you're like, and every month I'm like, this is amazing. This now solves this problem. It just gets better and better and better. So I think the sooner you start using that tool, the you're going to eventually be there anyway, in my opinion. And it's free. Let's not forget that, right? Yeah. So the way that I think about Data Studio in the most powerful way is and this is the difference between analytics reports and Data Studio reports. Analytics reports, you see the thing you're looking for and a whole lot of other stuff that you're not, right? That other stuff is almost always, because it's kind of in your eye view, it kind of goes like, well, what's that? Wonder why bounce rates like that? And then you're like, well, no, let me click on this other report. And then you're down this rabbit hole and you leave without any real action and more like, I don't even know, you know what, I'll come back to this thing later.
3 hours wasted.
Right, exactly. It's not useful. It's not as useful.
Right.
But with Data Studio, you can create a dashboard that is very focused on giving answers as opposed to information. Right? So when you come up with your planning process, you think about, okay, what question do I want to answer? Right. What information will I need? What will that dashboard kind of look like? Then you go to analytics. Okay, that's where the information is. Cool. I'm going to connect this to the Data Studio. Native integration works really well.
Yeah.
And then you'll build a dashboard that might say, okay, these are my, let's use a simple one. Let's say top 10 landing pages. Then you build a dashboard that just shows top 10 landing pages and what you want to know about those top 10 landing pages. Yeah. Right? How many goals were achieved that were my donor signups less than $500? How many goals were achieved, donor signups more than $500? Next column. That's it. Now you've got this one little thing that answers the question. Yeah. Right? And just a little pro tip on dashboards, we encourage people to put the questions in the dashboard.
Oh, I see.
And then have the information. Right? Because you might, at the time, you might know what you meant. And then 3 months later, you're like, what was this again? Like, I don't know what, this just seems like information. And the second it looks like information, you've lost. You got to go back and say, okay, well, how do I identify it so that it's an answer, a useful answer that I can take action on? Because if it doesn't relate to an action you can take, if it's just, like this is the death knell, the interesting to know, right? Interesting to know is not a thing. Get out of that. If you're thinking interesting to know, like
it's the last 40 slides of your slide deck,
exactly.
You can hide.
Yeah, just get rid of that. It's just, you go back and say, okay, instead of interesting to know, it's what actions will I take based on what this report is telling me. And if you can't take actions, why know it, right? It has to come down to an action.
That makes sense. So something like Data Studio, is that something that your average fundraiser can jump in and set up? Does it require a lot more technical expertise?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously we do trainings on it, so there's lots of different trainings out there. They can Google YouTube. There's a tiny learning curve, as there is to all things, right? But generally speaking, in Data Studio, it's pretty simple and easy to get going. They have templates, so that's a really quick sort of beginner way to, you can copy somebody's template, hook it into your Google Analytics, that's great. There's your numbers.
That's great.
And it gives you that good enough to get going start. I don't think that's where you're going to end up, because I think templates are really there to answer somebody else's questions, not yours necessarily, and it becomes a little bit more information. But it gets you that practice with the tool, and then you can make it better and make it better and make it better. Like, give yourself permission to not be perfect, right? Because you're always going to hear, oh, well, this nonprofit I was at, they're measuring this, and you're like, oh my God, we're not even setting goals yet. Like, how are we going to do this?
Right.
And it's like, you know what? Get good enough to get going, come back and make it better later. like that's okay.
Yeah.
And you will find after a few months of doing that, you look back and you're like, actually, we're the nonprofit that's not telling people right how they should set stuff up.
Now.
Right. It doesn't take that long.
Right.
It's just consistency and forgiving yourself for not being perfect. And there's always a learning curve. It's there. But there's plenty of resources out there to help you.
Great. That's super helpful. Thank you for that. So the one super report that you gave, you said can get 80% of your questions.
Yep.
Do you have any go-to custom reports that you always build out if you're helping someone set up their Google Analytics to get some deeper level insight?
They are all, so source medium I use a lot in Google Analytics. These are the native reports that are available.
Yeah.
So I'll use the source medium report. I will use the campaigns report because then I can say the traffic for like Win Monthly Pass program, if I click on that campaign, I can see all the traffic lined up that's pointing to that and then dive into the results I'm getting from that traffic based on ACE goals.
Right.
So that's a nice report. And if you ever click on your campaigns report and you just see a ton of campaigns, number one, if you see more than 10, there's probably something going on. But when you click on that campaign, if it's just one traffic source, you go, You click on the next campaign and it's a different traffic source, you're like, you fractured your campaigns,
Something's
right?
wrong.
Every traffic source is trying to do the same thing,
Right.
but everybody called it something different because they were using different vendors. So try to get a little bit more coordination back there.
Sure, that makes sense.
So the source medium report for sure, 100% love that one. The campaigns report, because of it shows you how they're working, and then the e-commerce report with the added secondary dimension, they call it, of source.
Yeah.
Where is this coming from, right? Where are these sales coming from?
Sure.
That's primarily what we'll use in GA. Not that we don't use it for other things. We use it a lot for drill downs.
Okay.
But most of the answers that we're doing, Data Studio.
Okay.
So we've created specific funnels. They are literal images of funnels. So we don't have to think. Like, I think about dashboards, and I think they should be like your car dashboard.
Right.
You look down, you see the speedometer, you know how fast you're going, you know instantly, do I speed up, do I slow down? That's why you can make your dashboards. That's like, I tell people, it's like your spirit animal when it comes to creating a dashboard, right? So then you can get in there and you can say, okay, now I can look at a funnel, a visual funnel, I can see my conversion, I can see how much traffic I'm getting through those different stages,
Right.
and I instantly know, because I know what I'm looking for, I know what my forecasts are, what stage is working, what stage isn't, or if everything's working, more traffic.
Right.
And if I can't do more traffic because I've just maxed out the traffic for whatever reason, well, let's create another funnel. Let's create another product for that audience because I can expand out. But I know exactly what actions I'm going to take based upon the numbers that I'm getting, which is why I love Data Studio.
Yeah.
Because it is literally a blank slate that you just put the image of a funnel and then put numbers next to it. And it's intuitive and it's simple and you don't have to overcomplicate it.
Sure. Yeah, that's kind of what Leo was getting into a little bit too.
100%. Leo was talking about the story.
Things. Yes.
It's 100%. Data Studio is a fantastic tool for doing that.
Cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to answer
It's
some
been my
questions
pleasure. I
and
appreciate you
sharing
guys
with
having me.
everyone. So thank you so much. We will be right back with one more interview before we throw back to the stage. Thank you so much for tuning in.